Hi, I'm Ems, aka on Deck and Wings. So painting skin can be one of the most intimidating things, and because there's so many different shades and colours and nuances, but I wanted to show you a straightforward way of getting awesome results with darker skin tones. So I'm going to be painting this in sub-assembly. You don't have to do this along with me. If it's attached to a model, that's fine. Another way to do that is to cut off a piece of an old sprue and stick the head to that as well. I like to keep a load of heads in a bag like a weirdo, like Conrad Kurtz. It's a great way to practice, especially if you want to get to display level painting, but like I said before, don't have to do this. So I prime the model in black first, and then I put some thin coats of Rhinox hide all over the top of this. For our first highlight, we are going to be using doombull brown, or your own equivalent. If you don't have this, add a bit of red to a brown colour. So I've added this brown to my wet palette, and then what I'm going to do is thin this down. Also, I always get frustrated when people say too thin coats or thin your paints. It's not necessarily about just thinning your paints, it's about getting the right consistencies with your paints. You can wipe away the excess and test the paint out on the back of your nail, or a piece of paper to the side, or a sponge. We want to get as much control as we can, and the more water we add, the less control we have, so I like to wipe away some of the excess. I'm going to be sketching out these highlights, so where the light would naturally catch on the face, and you can Google and look up some images yourself to get some inspiration of where these highlights would be. Generally, your highlights would be your forehead, your cheeks, your nose, your chin. But we still want to have some of those darker areas showing through with the Rhinox hide. But it doesn't matter too much if you feel like you've added too much doombull brown. We can always go back in and work some more shadows in later on. I do use a magnifying glass as well, although I don't completely rely on it for painting. It does help with smaller features. Although I didn't actually use one for this video, which is kind of a pain, trying to get this into focus and get the details as well. The camera does get more in focus as the video goes on, but just for this first part it was a little bit out of focus, and I think as well with the darker skin tone it's hard to pick up on camera at this stage. If you were batch painting, you could probably just leave it there if you wanted to, and it would look pretty cool. For our next highlight, we are going with Bugman's Glow. If you don't have this colour, or an equivalent, you could add some red to a lighter skin tone. So again, I'm adding this to my wet palette and thinning it down, and using the back of my nail to test it out and to take away some of the excess. So essentially, this paint is going over where the doombull brown was, but we're adding less of it, so we still want to have some of the doombull brown showing through. That's kind of the principle with highlights. The more highlights you add, the less paint in areas that you cover. For my last highlight, I'm using ustabiti bone mixed with Bugman's Glow. Again, use whatever equivalent you do have. So the same principle applies again. We are thinning this down, taking away the excess, testing it out on the back of my nail. So the same principle as before, adding less, but I'm going to be focusing more on the forehead and the nose and the cheeks and the chin. The problem with darker skin tones is the more highlights we add, the more desaturated it gets, so it doesn't really match up as well. But there will be a way around that towards the end of the video after we've added these highlights. As I said at the beginning of the video, this is a much easier way to paint faces and models, where you sketch out the colours first and then you tie the colours together later on, which isn't difficult as you think it's going to be. So I'm happy with these final highlights here, and I'm going to just go back in with some shadows. I want to define the darker areas more, so you can do this with black paint if you want to, but what I'm going to do is get some Rhinox hide, and then I'm going to mix some black paint and off black paint with this. So I'm pushing the contrast by making some more shadows in the recesses. So underneath the eyes is a really great place for this, and down the sides of the nose. Underneath the main highlight of the cheeks, and then some of the other areas which I left black from before. Again, we want that thin down consistency. So I just wanted to paint the lips here, which you don't necessarily have to do, but I think it just adds that bit more realism. So mix a little bit of a dark red in with your brown, and then go over the lips. So this is what I was talking about when I'm going to be tying all these colours together so they don't look as harsh and jarring with those highlights. So I'm going to be using a glaze of doombull brown, or whatever equivalent like mid-tone that you have, so the first highlight you added over the Rhinox hide. You will want this watered down to more of a wash consistency. That's what a glaze is. Essentially, in my terms, I think a glaze is like a wash. Instead of going into the recesses, it goes on top of the main parts of the model. So I'm just testing this out in the back of my nail again, and then this is going essentially all over the face. If you think maybe the paint's too thick, which you've created, you can just grab some water on your brush and just start to thin it down on the model itself. The thing with the glaze is we still want to have the work we've done previously showing through, but the glaze just enhances and changes those colours underneath. The reason I've used a lot of pinks and reds is that all skin types have blood in them, obviously, so that'll show through on the skin. And I think this like doombull brown, reddish warm brown colour is really cool for creating lovely darker skin tones when you're starting out trying to paint them. So for the next part, I'm going to be painting the eyes like the sadist I am. You don't have to paint the eyes on if you don't want to. So you get more control with the side of your brush rather than the point of it. I've also turned the model to the side, so this is easier. So you start off with the corner of the eye and then drag it outwards. Also, this white paint, I've only added a little bit of water to it because the thicker your paint is, the more control you have over it. So if this was too watery, it would just go everywhere. And whilst we're at it, being sadists, let's put the pupil in. So get the black paint and make sure this isn't too thin. You want to have maximum control. And again, it can be a lot easier to put this on the side and use the side of your brush just to put some black paint there. It doesn't have to be super neat, nobody's gonna check with the microscope, but just get it on there. I'll put what brush I used throughout this video in the description below. As always, thank you for watching. Remember to enjoy your hobbies for yourself, respect that people enjoy them in their own ways, and at the end of the day, they're just war dollies. I'll see you in the next one.